The Supreme Court's verdict on the reserved seats for women and non-Muslims has been postponed until tomorrow. A three-member bench led by Chief Justice 𝐄𝐧𝐰𝐬 will announce the decision at 9 a.m. Earlier today, the Sunni Ittihad Council protested outside the court as the verdict was awaited. The court reserved its judgment after hearing appeals from the SIC, which had joined forces with PTI-backed independent candidates following their February 8th election wins. The Election Commission of Pakistan had previously ruled that the SIC was not entitled to reserved seats due to legal defects, distributing those seats to other parties instead. The Peshawar High Court upheld the ECP's decision, but the SIC appealed to the Supreme Court. The Apex Court suspended the ECP and PHC decisions, affecting 77 members of the National and Provincial Assemblies. This has temporarily reduced the ruling coalition's strength in the National Assembly. The Supreme Court's decision on this matter will have significant implications for allocation of reserved seats in the future. Moving on to international news, Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev arrived in Islamabad on Thursday for a two-day official visit from July 11th to 12th, at the invitation of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. During the visit, President Aliyev will hold meetings with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and President Asif Ali Zardari. The two sides will engage in wide-ranging discussions on areas of mutual interest to further strengthen bilateral cooperation. Several agreements are expected to be signed during the visit. In aviation news, a Saudi Airlines flight from Riyadh caught fire upon landing at Peshawar's Bacha Khan International Airport on Thursday. The Civilian Aviation Authority reported that all passengers and crew were safely evacuated. A CAA spokesperson stated that the air traffic controllers noticed smokes and spark from the aircraft's left-hand landing gear as it landed and alerted the pilots. Fire and rescue services were also informed. CAA vehicles quickly extinguished the flames, preventing a major accident. Saifullah confirmed that all 276 passengers and 21 crew members were evacuated using an inflatable slide. Video footage showed passengers disembarking via the emergency slide. Peshawar airport officials confirmed that the airport remains operational and all flights will continue as scheduled. The health ministry in Gaza reports that Israeli forces have killed at least 38,345 people since October 7th. In the past 24 hours alone, 50 Palestinians were killed, with 88,295 wounded since the conflict began. Moving to humanitarian efforts, the UN's World Food Programme states it supports about 1 million Palestinians monthly. However, hindered access by the Israeli military limits aid to Gaza's 2.3 million residents. The WFP continues to call for a ceasefire to enhance humanitarian response. Meanwhile, in central Gaza, a UNRWA facility in Deir al-Balah shelters 14,000 displaced civilians. Struggling since March 11th without food distribution, severe malnutrition and disease are rampant, causing fatalities due to sanitation shortages. The Shujaia neighborhood has seen over 85% of buildings rendered uninhabitable, leaving 120,000 residents homeless. Infrastructure and medical services have been severely impacted by ongoing Israeli military actions. The United States has pledged $100 million in additional aid for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank through U.S. aid. This funding supports the UN's World Food Programme's efforts amid challenges in aid distribution due to the Israeli restrictions and security risks. A statement from the U.S. aid agency said the additional funding brings U.S. contributions to the Palestinians since the war began to more than $774 million. Earlier, the U.S. agreed to resume shipping 500-pound bombs to Israel as part of the $3.8 billion worth of military aid it transfers annually. In diplomatic efforts, An Israeli delegation is en route to Cairo for Gaza ceasefire talks following negotiations in Doha. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office aims to continue discussions with mediators and Hamas. Speaking of negotiations, Hamas criticized delays by mediators in updating them on Gaza ceasefire talks and prisoner exchanges. Ceasefire negotiations in Qatar involve efforts to finalize terms amidst ongoing conflict. The Lebanese Health Ministry reports that 1,904 people have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Lebanon since the conflict began, with the majority being men between the ages 25 and 44. It said many injuries were caused by white phosphorus bombs dropped by Israel. Russia announced it will counteract NATO's expansion in Europe, citing the alliance's movements towards its border amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov expressed concerns over NATO's decision to create logistics hubs in the Black Sea cities and additional facilities in Europe. Peskov emphasized the need for Russia to take coordinated actions to deter NATO, calling the alliance a serious threat to national security. This follows announcements from the US and Germany about the deployment of long-range missiles in Germany by 2026 and the readiness of a new US air defense base in Poland. President Vladimir Putin has previously indicated plans to resume production of intermediate and shorter-range nuclear-capable missiles. This comes after the US withdrew from the INF Treaty in 2019, accusing Russia of violations. At the NATO summit, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned of the risks of a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO, stressing the need to avoid such steps. Meanwhile, Russia's Ministry of Defense reported the capture of the village of Voskhod in the Donetsk region, where Ukraine claims the fiercest fighting is taking place. NATO leaders have convened to discuss the growing alignment of authoritarian powers with a focus on Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's support for Russia's economy. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg emphasized the need for closer collaboration to uphold peace and the international order. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has endorsed the deployment of U.S. missiles in Germany by 2026, citing the necessity for enhanced precision strike capabilities in response to increased Russian weapons in Europe. Moscow criticized the move as escalatory and pledged a corresponding response. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó commented on NATO's stance towards China, asserting that NATO should remain a defensive alliance and not transform into an anti-China bloc. Szijjártó's remarks followed criticism by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán of NATO's handling of the Ukraine conflict, emphasizing unity within the alliance. Ukrainian officials, including Andriy Yermak, expressed satisfaction with talks in Washington, D.C., advocating for Ukraine's path towards NATO membership. NATO member countries affirmed their commitment to extending an invitation to Ukraine when conditions are met. Meanwhile, the Kremlin reiterated concerns over NATO's involvement in the Ukraine conflict, emphasizing Russia's readiness to respond to planned U.S. missile deployments in Germany. Russian officials continue to assert their stance against perceived NATO encroachments. In Arctic developments, Canada, Finland, and the U.S. announced increased cooperation under the Icebreaker collaboration effort. This initiative aims to bolster security and economic ties in the Arctic amid heightened Russian and Chinese interests in the region.